United States, Matt, but we'll be watching very closely as the market has already been digesting this latest jobs data today.
Yeah, I thought it was a great way to describe it this morning on Surveillance when John Farrow said it's kind of a questionable appetizer that you maybe don't want before the main course, and yet people still trade on it. Let's discuss the big picture from a small business point of view. For that, we bring in Thomas Sullivan, Vice President of Small Business Policy at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And you know, small businesses are the biggest job creators in the U.S. How does the employment picture, the labor picture look from your perspective, Tom?
Well, thank you, Matt. You know, that the headwinds that small businesses are facing right now certainly are caused in part by worker shortages. This is not new. Small businesses have been facing this for over 6 years. We poll our small business members 4 times a year, and our latest poll from MetLife shows that about 40% of small businesses are planning on hiring in the next 6 months. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is that's down about 7 points from the previous quarter.
So how does that then affect inflation? I mean, are these companies still able to raise prices? Are they having to pay more for workers? Do they have margin compression? What are they looking at?
Well, Matt, there's a lot in that multi-part question. I'll try to hit each one of your points. So the first is the good news. Small businesses are doing pretty well right now. Our latest MetLife and U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Index is at the highest level since the pandemic. Now, inflation is still the strongest headwind, and it has been for 6 consecutive quarters. Within inflation, small businesses' biggest concern, and that's 56% of small businesses, are worried about wage inflation. And that really gets at your core question, is that even though small businesses are more confident, and that confidence is at the highest level since the pandemic, even though small businesses are more confident, they're really worried about what it takes to find, hire, and keep the best employees. And so that's where wage inflation is now tops the list of all of those inflationary things that small businesses are worried about, whether it's cost of supplies, cost of energy, and then their highest concern, cost of labor.
Well, it is fascinating when you think about the fact that so many companies, especially during the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, were scrambling to make sure that they had the workforce that they needed. But we're now entering this period where I think, and Matt was alluding to it already, we're trying to determine at what point you start to see more weakness in the employment picture. The jobs market typically is more of a lagging indicator. When companies are making those decisions on whether or not they ultimately have to pare back their workforce, Thomas, at what point does it enter the dialogue? What point do they start thinking more seriously about that?
Well, so small businesses have been trying to hire for a long time. I mean, I'm sure the two of you have come across situations where you go to a restaurant and only part of the restaurant is open because that's all they can staff. And so this is not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for about 6 years. So small businesses want to hire because they want to keep up with that high consumer demand, but they just are not able to find and keep the best employees. Now, the good news that we found in our latest MetLife survey is that small businesses feel as though they have an advantage over some of their larger competitors because 89% of small businesses believe that their family atmosphere within their businesses gives them a hiring advantage over some of their larger competitors. So I heard some time ago this expression that small businesses are leaning into their smallness to overtake some of the challenges. Now, their latest challenge is wage inflation, and so I expect that we're going to see small businesses leaning in to what makes them unique as an employer to try to get the best employees working for them.
All right, Thomas, thanks so much for joining us. Thomas Sullivan there, Vice President of Small Business Policy at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. After the ADP number, of course, we're looking for any indicator, John, of what we're going to see in the non-farm